Hello and welcome to Once More with Feeling, On the Line, the newest album by Jenny Lewis. So, I came into this completely blind, like I do with a lot of albums. Never heard of Jenny Lewis. Well, I say that, I think I heard of her in the capacity of being an actress and didn't know about her having a music career or anything like that. But I decided, because initially I'd thought about doing the new Megadeth album, but that's a compilation thing, so I was sort of like, there's no point covering that. It would just be going over whether or not the bunch of songs that had been presented were ordered correctly or whatever. So I looked at the release list, saw this, and it's sort of like indie rock. I thought, let's give some indie rock stuff a go. And it's definitely not what I typically hear in the pop charts. Maybe in the 80s, but not currently. And yeah, it just went from there. Before I get any further into it, some people might already know about some of the background of this album and some of the people involved. I don't want to touch upon the Ryan Lewis business. He was one of the producers on the album and contributed to some of the songs. Nah, we're not covering that. This show is purely about the music. I don't want to touch about issues like that. So, nipping that in the bud and moving on. So yeah, went through this album being pleasantly surprised. As I say, I went into it blind, didn't know what I was going to expect. It's very much in the sort of late 80s, early 90s influence of rock, but also with a bit of the tones of later Fleetwood Mac and the like. A lot of Beatles influences, which is appropriate because Ringo Starr is on this album. There are some songs that sound kind of weird, and one in particular, Do-Si Do, that's a bit of an odd one because it's a surprisingly sombre song for what it is, but we'll get to that. So let's get into this. The album is very much framed as a bit of a break-up to recovery album. At least that's the impression I'm getting. It's sort of the deterioration of a relationship into finally getting over it and then possibly a relapse. Mileage may vary where that's concerned. But opening track, Head's Gonna Roll. That's interesting because that is one of the rare instances where no one's the good guy. It is very bitter, but it's justifiably bitter. It is a very prototypical Broken Heart song, but everyone's the bad guy, which is a rare example. It's not rare that everyone is the bad guy in the song, but it's rare that Jenny Lewis actually makes a point about everyone being the bad guy. It's like, it's basically passed out to explain that everyone's going to get what they deserve. There's juxtaposing of the ex-lover thinking that she should go to hell and he deserves heaven. Or she. I'm not judging. But it's the juxtaposing of every other verse chorus switches who believes they should go to heaven and who should go to hell. Which is very unique. I haven't heard many songs which operate in that understanding, and I like that. I like that she recognises that sometimes relationships do just end up with everyone really angry, really bitter, and everyone just saying really bad, stupid things, and you're able to go, oh, so that's why you ended up breaking up. You were both idiots. I'd say the album is a breakup to recovery. The next song, not so much. Wasted Youth. Now, if I'm understanding this right, and I could perfectly understand if I'm not, but if I'm understanding it right, this song is basically a discussion of sort of heroin addiction, possibly. I mean, that's what I understand from the chorus. I wasted my youth on a poppy just for fun. Maybe I'm understanding things wrong, but I don't know. But it's quite a fascinating look at just younger self and how you can get drawn into sort of drug abuse and alcohol addiction and all sorts of substance use that ultimately deteriorates your younger experiences, and you find yourself as you get older being frustrated with them. This is all speculation on my part, it's just... That's the impression that I get. Next, Red Bull and Hennessy. This is a bit of a weird one, because the first time I listened through it, it struck a chord for the reasons of being in love with someone and trying to figure out why it is that they either don't or think that they're not able to love you back. And then I re-listened to it and I got a completely different impression, where it can be read as that moment where you're trying to rekindle the relationship. You still love the person, but they are very resistant to any of your attempts to reignite the flame. And as a way of coping with that reality, you end up getting drunk so that you can just have a bit of fun and not worry about that for a little bit. But on the flip side, you could read it as being high on Red Bull and Hennessy is that because of you being in love with that person, it makes you feel you're love drunk, and also you've got this ridiculous, painful amount of energy by being in love with them. As I say, it struck two different chords based on two different listens. So, I don't know, maybe it'll have a different impression the next time I listen to it. Hollywood Lawn. I'll be honest, I have no clue whatsoever what this song is about. It does remind me of a sort of mixture of Guns N' Roses cover of Knocking on Heaven's Door and Hey Jude at other points. So it's doing something right. I just have no idea what it's actually about. Please, if you can explain it, go for it in the comments. I encourage this. I had no idea. All I knew is I liked the song. Do-si Do. So yes, this was one of the weirder tracks. Strangely somber and curiously slow song for what it is.
Turn up the stereo till everything rattles.
Yeah, as I say, it's one of the weirder songs, and it won't surprise anyone to hear that Beck was the producer on that one. You know, if you know what Beck is like. But yeah, really don't know what to make of that one. I can certainly get behind the message. It's just, how strangely downbeat it is. Not morose or macabre or anything, it's in contest with the actual lyrics. So, make of that what you will. Dogwood. And we have another one that strikes very close to home. It's a stock detailing of a very passionate, tumbly-turny, you are wholly in love and wholly consumed by your love for this person, but it very quickly runs its course, and as a consequence, sooner or later you will become estranged from that person because you just can't keep the passion alive, or there are other problems that arise. The slow piano that is added to by other instruments and crescendos, and its combination with the feel of great frustration and held back tears in Jenny Lewis's voice, they all really work quite powerfully together.
There's nothing I can do, 'cause I fell in love with you.
And it's a great track, just be careful with drinking any wine with it. Party Clown. Again, I'm not entirely sure what to make of that song. It is done in a very demented and strangely cheerful manner, but it's juxtaposed with the whole idea of being a bit of a, as the name suggests, a party clown. So you're up for anything and you're making jokes, making fun at parties, and as a consequence no one takes you seriously and people expect that you're going to just be down for anything. You do get that feeling of the detailing of a psychedelic trip at times. You know, it could possibly be reflecting on experiences of Jenny Lewis, possibly at one party in particular. Little White Dove. This is quite a funky track. I'm really down with it musically. But again, I have no clue, none whatsoever, what it's talking about.
Was it a dream when you call me kitten in Her Majesty?
Like, on the initial listen, I didn't know what it was talking about. On subsequent listens, still no idea. And yet, it's probably one of my favourite tracks on the album. It's strange how that dichotomy exists, but it's doing something right. When I say funky, I'm not talking outright funk like Superstitious or Play That Funky Music, White Boy. I'm just saying that it takes quite a few funk influences. It's different, and I like different. Even if it sounds awful, if it's different, then you're doing something right. This is audibly pleasing to my ears. Taffy. Taffy is a very intentionally despondent song. Taffy basically is when you're trying your absolute best to keep a relationship up. Basically lying to yourself about how well the relationship is going and going to various lengths to try and keep the spark alive, but it's just not working. And reflecting on the fact that ultimately a relationship can be broken apart simply by not being able to say what is on your mind. And you start looking at things behind your lover's back and, reading their text messages and wondering what is going on. And being supremely frustrated because you're not able to talk about that. Again, it struck a bit of a chord. The title track, On the Line, This is a bit of a trickier one to break down. Like, it uses the framework of being left for another woman, and also how, maybe literally, maybe metaphorically, I like to think of it more as a metaphor, because that feels more in keeping with the themes presented in the album. That when the line goes,
Whenever things get complicated, you run away to Mexico.
and I like to understand that as meaning that things would get so hard that they'd just shut down and become completely cut off. You wouldn't be able to reach them. And then ultimately she is left for another woman. But she is desperately trying to convince them to not go down this path. Using quite intriguing framework of listening to her heart over the phone. Again, not literal, but just hearing her out, listening to what she has to say, and possibly just taking a moment to think about the good times and how deeply she is in love with them.
Before you let her under your sweater tonight, listen to my heart beating. Listen to my heart beating. Listen to my heart beating all night.
Finally, you have the musical Whiplash song of Rabbit Hole. I say musical whiplash because after On the Line, it's like, oh god, ow, what the fuck just happened?
I'm not gonna go down the rabbit hole with you.
But yeah, after you recover from the musical whiplash and the rush of blood to your brain, you'll find that this is quite an effective closer, and it's quite clever. I see what you're doing there, Jenny Lewis. You wouldn't think maybe you didn't think I'd pick up on that, or maybe you were intending for me to. But what she does is she frames it as she's not going to go down the rabbit hole again with the person. And then, during the fade out, there's a slight change. It's very subtle, but if you're listening, you pick up on it. If you've heard the album, you know what I'm talking about. In fact, I just want you to go listen to the album. That's it, I'm finishing here. I don't want to say what exactly happens, but listen to the album. You gotta listen. Like, my rating, 4 out of 5. This is a really good album. I didn't have a single song I didn't like. Some of them I liked more than others, which is why it's 4 out of 5 instead of 5 out of 5, or even whatever. I really like this album. Like, I want to look into more of Jenny Lewis's stuff. If you're a Jenny Lewis fan, I have listened to some of her other songs, and if you're a Jenny Lewis fan, this is right up your street. If you're into sort of late 80s, early 90s, even some of the late 90s, sort of indie rock style, Fleetwood Mac, Lisa Lougheed, sort of Run With Us style rock, then this will definitely be up your alley. Go listen to this album, and yeah, I've already given way too much away about Rabbit Hole, but like, that's a really clever closer. I like that. It's actually quite clever. I think that's why I think that it was left as the last song. Not just because of the message conveyed, but also because of the musical whiplash. I think that was deliberate. Yeah. That's it. I'm finishing here. Go get this album. You won't regret it. This was quite the do-si-do for me.